After studying nearly 10,000 millionaires, the Ramsey Solutions National Millionaire Survey comes to a conclusion that there are 5 basic expenses that the ultra-rich generally shy away from, or things that they do not buy at all. However, low-income households are very keen on spending money on these 5 things. And so in today's video, we're looking at analyzing those 5 things and how you can cut back on those, save more, and invest more at the end of the day, and then avoid the cycle of having to live paycheck to paycheck. And if you're new here, my name is Nana. I hold a master's degree in business finance, and on this channel, we discuss everything personal finance and personal development. And so without further ado, we come to the first thing that the ultra-rich actually shy away from, and that is lottery tickets. According to a recent survey by Bankrate, it comes to a conclusion that households earning anywhere between $20,000 and $30,000 are more likely to spend in excess of $400 on lottery tickets. However, comparing them to households that earn anywhere between $75,000 and $100,000, those households are less likely to spend in excess of $100 on lottery tickets. And that comes to a conclusion that the ultra-rich know one thing, and that is wealth is not built based on luck. Instead, you have to take calculated attempts and several calculated risks in order to steer yourself towards the attainment of financial freedom. And so that is one thing that you have to think about. Buying lottery tickets as opposed to sitting down and then planning ahead of time in order to be able to secure a better future financially for yourself and your kids are some of the reasons why the ultra-rich actually differ from the bottom 92% of people who set resolutions or hope to become millionaires but are never able to achieve those goals throughout their lifetime. And so sit down, try as much as possible, and then assess your finances and avoid the likelihood or the thought that you're going to make wealth or build wealth through luck or through lottery tickets. That leads us to the second thing that the ultra-rich generally do not waste money on, and that is brand new cars. Research from the Millionaire Next Door comes to a conclusion that most rich people generally drive vehicles that are 3 years older, and that is simply because brand new vehicles generally lose up to 20% of their value within their first year and up to 40% within the first 5 years. And so any rich person that is going out there to purchase a vehicle has prior knowledge of this statistic, and so they avoid having to go in for the most or the latest vehicles simply because they would rather spend those extra money on asset or income bearing assets that subsequently would increase their ability to earn, for example, by investing in the real estate or probably even in the stock market. Because think about it, if a vehicle is valued at $100,000 today and you're going to buy it and it will lose 20% of its value, that is $20,000 within the first year and up to $40,000 within the first 5 years, then that actually tells you that if you're really prudent about expending money and you're really conscious about what the importance of investing and saving actually is, like the ultra rich do know, then you would actually stay back and buy a model that is relatively older by way of securing some level of discount on a vehicle that is easy to use and more reliable, as opposed to buying the brand new vehicle and then losing in excess of up to 40% within the first 4 years. So what the ultra rich generally do is that they shy away from these expenses, get these vehicles at a discount, and then invest or save the excess that would have otherwise been lost through depreciation within the first 5 years of the brand new vehicle. This brings us to the third thing that the ultra-rich generally do not spend on, and that is carrying a credit balance. So one of the key reasons why most people do not have any monies left at the end of the month to save and of course to invest is simply because of personal loans. And as it stands now, the average APR on the credit card is hovering anywhere between 21% and 23% as at the time that I was recording this video. And according to the Ramsey survey, about 75% of all the 10,000 millionaires that were surveyed went on to say that they had never carried debt. That simply tells you that the ultra-rich are shying away from high-level interest that would eventually plunge them further into debt. Because one of the key things that you have to highlight is the fact that anytime that you make purchases on a credit card, what you don't know is that they generally have a model that will subsequently get you to pay interest on that loan and then also prevent you from having to pay back that loan. Because if you're able to pay within the shortest possible time, then those credit card companies might not necessarily make enough money. But if they are able to delay those purchases, that means you are going to pay more interest, and that subsequently plunges millions of households into debt. So try as much as possible to reduce your dependence dependency on credit, and that is one of the hallmark of the ultra rich. They know how to avoid credit, and if they do, they try as much as possible to repay within the first 30 days after going to make any purchases on credit. This brings us to the fourth thing that generally the ultra rich tend to avoid, and that is designer or high status brand items. So one of the key things that is highlighted once again in the Millionaire Next Door is that out of the hundreds of millionaires that were surveyed, close to 50% of them had not purchased a suit that exceeded $400 in price. So one of the key things that you have to highlight is the fact that even though the ultra rich have the financial muscle to make all these luxurious purchases, sometimes they hold back simply because they consider the opportunity cost of having to spend on those items. There are some items that if you spend on, you do not get generally any return from. So as opposed to spending on these liabilities in the guise of assets, what they generally do is that they try to actually purchase assets or income-bearing assets that increase their net worth and also increase their ability to become financially free at the end of the day. So try as much as possible to assess your life at this point and then ask yourself, these purchases that I've made over the last 3 months, how many of them are actually bringing money into my pocket, and how many of them have actually taken or are still taking money out of my pocket? An asset simply is anything that brings money into your pocket, and that is where you want to be. That is what you want to be spending on as it stands now, because that is what the ultra rich tend to do, and that is why they continue to get richer. This brings us to the fifth and the last thing that the ultra rich avoid, and that is get rich quick investments. So one of the key things that poor people are generally keen on is they're really in a haste to build wealth. As opposed to this, what you have to know is that building wealth actually takes time. And you have to consider one thing, that is delayed gratification. You may sometimes have to do certain things for a very long period of time before you see some benefits springing out of those initial investments. So what you have to think about as it stands now is to ask yourself the simple question, what am I doing over the long term, or probably within the next 2 to 5 years, in a bid to increase my income? And that is how the ultra rich actually think. They focus on the long term, trying so hard to make several inputs that compound over time and then eventually push them several steps towards the attainment of their financial goals. So don't be dragged into get rich quick schemes. Don't be dragged into gurus, especially in this day and age of social media, promising you several returns within the shortest possible time, recommending investments and all that. As a matter of fact, Warren Buffett, who happens to be the most successful investor in the stock market of all time, goes on to say that you have to be patient, try as much as possible to build wealth by putting money in low-cost index funds. And then probably over 20, 30, 40 years, you would actually become a multi-millionaire. For example, if you're able to save $1,000 every month at age 25, by the time that you're 51, you would actually become a multi-millionaire. However, if you're to delay by 5 years and start at age 30, you would actually become a multi-millionaire by age 56. And that is not bad. Think about it. Most people are actually struggling. And according to research, the average age of millionaires in the US is age 61. So that is not really bad for you to hit a millionaire status by age 50. Take your time, take calculated risk, try as much as possible not to be dragged into these get-rich-quick schemes, and then of course you would survive and join the 8.8% of millionaires in the US. And so of course, if you found value in this video, kindly share your comments and let me know what your thoughts are. Thank you for spending time with us, and see you in the next video.